On to another important story that we have been following. The social media giant Meta has told Delhi High Court that since it's a private entity, the rights for free speech cannot be invoked against it. Meta's response comes in view of a petition filed by a user against the disabling of his Instagram account. The US-based company in its argument stated that it's a case of contractual dispute between the company and its user. Remember, Meta is the mother organization of Instagram and Facebook. And of course, as we know that this aspect of freedom of speech, especially on internet and on social media platforms, has been a raging debate for quite some time. On this issue, I'm joined by Karnika Seth, cyber law expert and advocate who practices in the Supreme Court, and N.S. Nappinai, who's also a practicing advocate in the Supreme Court. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us on this discussion. Coming to you first, Karnika Seth, we've seen that this freedom of speech debate, of course, virtual, offline, online, this is an issue which keeps coming back, boomeranging back to the, the public discourse quite often. Especially, recently we saw this came to the fore again during Elon Musk's, just a couple of days back, Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. And now we are seeing this matter, in fact, resurfacing once again with what Meta has now told in the Delhi High Court with connection to that petition. Do you think that this is a logical argument being given by private firms saying, we are not in the business of following or discharging any public duty? Freedom of speech, Article 19, fundamental right to speech, freedom of speech does not really concern us. We are going to do what we consider is best for our platform. Is that an argument which seems legally sound, and otherwise in terms of moral responsibilities that should lie with social media platforms? How do you perceive this debate?
Yes, a very pertinent issue indeed. What I personally feel about this issue is that in India, we have the fundamental right of free speech, So that's a fundamental right. It's guaranteed by the Constitution of India. And if any arbitrary decisions are made, even if it's a public, like a private platform or a public platform, the point is the accountability, After all, the rights of citizens cannot be flouted or violated in the name of a public, like a private contract. That is important, that the rights of natural justice, even, when it comes to opportunity of hearing or grievance redressal, accountability to answer to government if there is an additional, information needed on a particular dispute like this, is important. I mean, we cannot negate these because they have to be within the confines of law. Their actions, their compliances within India, how they are treating the customers in India or users in India is also of paramount concern, not only from the point of view of a private contract and whether from the moral standpoint, as you put it, but also from the legal standpoint. It's most important to look at the legalities and the rights of citizens. There is a duty to be answerable to both citizens and also government, if government requires, questioning and answer on what, opportunity of hearing was given before the injunction, like the accounts were blocked, or if in any kind of suspension or even termination of an account happens, whether it's on Twitter or any other social media for that matter of fact. That's my personal view.
Right, Ms. Nappinai, as Karnika Seth was also talking about this there, do you think that there should be a uniform standard that social media giants should be following when it comes to very crucial aspects like freedom of speech, or let's say hate speech? Facebook has, of course, deposed in front of the Delhi government earlier, as we know, where they said that we are following our standards and there are country laws that we are following. But when it comes to freedom of speech or content moderation, would it help if there is a uniform standard which the social media giants follow, whether it is happening in another country or in terms of what's happening in India?
Absolutely, that would be most welcome. Look at the irony of it. These were the same social media platforms which use the mechanism of free speech as the foundation to counter or contest compliance with the Indian laws when it came to complying with the intermediary guidelines. And today they file an affidavit in court questioning the fact that they have to comply with free speech laws or ensure the protection of the fundamental right of free speech. I find this contrarian stand to be not just misconceived, but it's a little too simplistic for Meta to raise this claim. to say that only fundamental rights are applicable only with respect to state agencies is an extremely simplistic stand and very outdated. Law has evolved substantially beyond that aspect. That it can be applied to private individuals, which encompasses private entities also, but in certain circumstances. And what those circumstances are have been evolved through various case laws that have emanated from the Supreme Court. The question that you're asking, therefore, goes to two primary issues. The first is an understanding with social media platforms in terms of what are their rights or duties. Where we draw the line with respect to content moderation by the social media platforms themselves, and how is it permissible for them to take a contrary stand when they are being called upon to take down certain content, etc. So, every time when they're asked to take down content, the stand will be, we are the final bastions of free speech, and we will not comply with this order because it would amount to content moderation, it would amount to violation of free speech mandates. But they resort to content moderation, and when somebody questions them on how it can be done, they're taking this contra stand to claim that they are not liable to or amenable to comply to the fundamental right of free speech.
So I would like to also...
And ensuring a balance to make sure that they behave in a neutral fashion, irrespective of what the position is.
Right.
That's something we definitely need. And that is something that regulations can also ensure.
Right. Kanika said you wanted to come in.
Yes, there are existing laws in India. We have the new, intermediary guidelines of 2021. We have blocking guidelines in place. There are requirements of grievous redressal forums to be, or officer to be within the, in premise, within India now. I mean, that's the regulatory requirement. They're answerable for any kind of, takedowns or any kind of voluntary action. They are supposed to have due diligence, guidelines duly followed. So when we talk about these rights, and we're talking about the times when we're in the PDP age, when we're talking about data protection, and that vis-a-vis not only government entities, but vis-a-vis private entities, it is a far-fetched reality to even say today that the writ jurisdiction only apply to the state or public function alone, when a platform like this, which scales so many user base and millions of user base in India, cannot simply just shirk their responsibility and say just that, it's only applicable to state functions and not, the right of free speech will not apply across their platforms because they've entered into a private arrangement with a party. So that's something which to me doesn't seem logical at all. And as per the law of the land also, it is a far-fetched argument which lacks any kind of basis, even in terms of law.
Like I said, and NS Napinai, before I wrap this up, a common question to both of you. Both of you are lawyers. You've spoken very soundly on the illegal aspects of things. But, if I am a user, if I'm a consumer, I don't really keep these things in my mind. Social media behavior of people would depend on so many other aspects. Nobody's really referring to the law when they're trying to post something. Probably it's an ego-driven thing or something that they just want to do for their own, pleasure. So in terms of that, would it be, a government guideline model which would be better, something which goes out to everybody, probably something that on a mass level people can keep in mind instead of like, a private company actually coming up with their own set of rules? What would be the best way to go about it so that you can as far as possible, clean up the space in social media? Because there are, of course, several issues. There's not going to be one solution to fix it all. But, what would be the right approach to go through it? Because honestly speaking, legality of things might be one aspect. But is the moral aspect of it that a private company can look at separately, or a government modulated mechanism? Would that be a better way to go about this issue when it comes to content moderation on such platforms?
Absolutely right and well put. This is something that is already there to some extent. So for instance, if you look at even the 2011 intermediary guidelines as well as what you have now under the 2021 guidelines, it already sets out in terms of a notice that every social media platform has to put up on its website to guide users in terms of what is permissible and what is impermissible content, which when they are sharing, and also the implications of sharing the impermissible content. So on one aspect, the guidelines are already there. Your earlier question in terms of harmonizing the conduct of social media platforms also actually ties in very nicely to this follow-up question, which is that when guidelines are provided for social media platforms to follow and in turn for them to communicate to users, what will happen is that without users getting confused about, and you're absolutely right, why should users worry about the very complex legal issues involved? They should just know, can I not? Is my content, my free speech right protected on this platform or not? And to what extent can I use it? What are the reasonable restrictions to it? This much of basic information should ideally be carried on social media platforms. This can be done as a self-regulatory mechanism or in terms of guidelines. And presently, it has to be done in terms of the guidelines to the extent that is provided under the intermediary guidelines of 2021.
I also wanted to say that, even unconscionable contracts, even private contracts have been held to be invalid in law, if this is encroaching on their, fundamental rights or is otherwise, illegal as per the law of the land. So those have been the settled law. And also in terms of IT law, if you specifically see information technology law, then we have a move towards PDB, as I said, or right to be forgotten, and such new, rules or laws that are now emanating. And these rights have been found to be, even under Article 21, of the Constitution of India, the right to life and freedom of speech is under 19. So we have, these rights already. And if it's a private contract, it doesn't mean that these rights will not be exercised by the users or they'll not be available for redressal. So it's important to see that the rights are protected, and that it's also government duty to protect the citizens. And also it is such private platforms which are operating, they are also answerable to law, both to the government and also to the user base. So they cannot just shirk responsibility by not understanding this is a matter of due diligence as well. So what rights you're encroaching of citizens, and how you're removing their content out, or how you're acting. And that's quite logical, because they have more accountability under the current law. They are more answerable under the current law. Right. Of the new media rules also of 2021. So their intermediary rules are very clear on that. They are supposed to have terms of use there. They're supposed to have privacy policy there. And that has to be absolutely legalistic. I mean, it cannot just say that, they're not going to answer. They can take down any content any moment. In fact, they have more obligations to comply with.
Right, a very complex issue, and probably not the last word or the last debate that we have had on this topic. Karnika Seth, NS Nappinai, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion. And with that, we'll slip into a short break, but news and updates continue. Very fast-paced developments coming in on Tanjinder Bagga's arrest. Stay tuned.